everybody. My name is Ko, my Atong, and then today I'm going to do a little bit of workshop on sketching and urban sketching, to be more precise. Before we begin, a little bit about myself. I'm a graphic design freelance and working as also a part-time teacher at Chunghwa Middle School number 1 and number 3. So today I'm going to do a workshop, very basic workshop on urban sketching, and we try to do it very simple. And as I'm not actually like very formally trained in art myself, we won't be going through very difficult and very complex steps and very formal steps of painting. We just try to use the normal tools that we can find in local bookstores or art shops, and we try to do the techniques that are not too difficult. And yeah, so we have three reference photos here, and we'll go through it. We try to make it a basic, intermediate, and advanced stage for the drawings. So without further ado, let's go. So here we have a photo of Fort Margherita, and as we can see, the structure is very big, and so we don't need to fill the whole page with everything we have in the photo, but basically we just try to do it like half the page. The drawing can be only half the page, but we can put it in the middle of the page so that it can fill the whole piece of paper. So we start, of course, with the horizon line. Most of the time we can use the rules of third and get the line slightly. Okay, here we use the pencil just to draw some sketch lines. We draw the sketch lines very softly so that later, if we have some mistakes, actually we don't have to use the eraser often, because the eraser can sometimes destroy the surface of the paper. So in order to conserve the surface of the paper, we can use the pencil very softly. So we just take the rough, very quick lines. The photo we have here is in a slight fisheye view, so the perspective is a little bit strange, but it's okay. We just try to get the form of it. As we can see, it's quite squarish around here, and then a bit of this one is not totally flat here, so we try to follow the form around here. And then here's a watchtower of the Fort Margherita here. It's slightly slanted in the photo, so we just draw it slightly slanted also, not totally vertical. So the roof of the watchtower. Here we have the basic shape of what we have in the photo. And this is the tower here. So fill it. So the tower is like 3 stories high, but it's not exactly 3/4, so it's okay. We can just build it. Observe. door, the fort. If we can observe that the window and the door makes a like in the middle. Okay, we can observe that the door and the middle window here, we can draw a straight line in the middle so that we can draw it quite balanced, but it's not that exactly balanced because of the perspective, so we can just try to look at it as like almost the same length if we were looking from it straight on. But it's okay, like even if it's a little bit of mistake, it's acceptable, so just not too close together is fine. So roughly we have almost the same length difference between these, and then in the middle, this middle one also, so it's slightly slanted because of the perspective. It's okay. So this door too, follow the perspective, the photo. Here we can have half again, so that the arc can be divided. And then on top is the wall roofs of the old fort, where the soldiers can put their guns. So we try to do it balanced. This one has 4, this one has 4 as well, this side has 4, this side has 4 as well. Actually we don't need to really go count them. In drawings or in sketching, we can just draw roughly how many we can see it. We don't really need to count it. Arcs of the windows. Those are shaped very, a lot of ornament shapes in, out. So we try to capture that in our drawing too. These holes are for the guns as well, where the soldiers or the guards can look up from these holes here into the whether there are enemies or people outside of the forts. We try to draw them up too. Windows to the dungeons, if I'm not mistaken. So basically, we're almost done with the pencil sketch. Later we can do some or trees. Our photo, reference photo here, we have the riverside and the big buildings at the bottom, at the background. But since we're drawing fort as a subject, we're going to try to change the buildings. This one is a watchtower here, but this building we will change it to like a tree, and this one also like a tree, so that it doesn't take away the focus from our subject, which is fort. Okay, So later, the color of the sky, we are going to play around with some blues also, so we don't really need to draw the clouds out. But if you want to, you can just draw simple clouds like that. We don't have to follow the dynamic of the folder we have, because it's a little bit harder to paint that kind of shape. So later we try to do more simple cloud. Okay, the pathway here, we see that there's a pathway, so we do the pathway too. Alright, so that's the pencil sketch for our drawing. We don't need to be too clean and too precise with it, because later on we're going to do the inking. Alright, I brought a few pens and markers here so that we can see what's the difference on doing inking. These, I will show these two first. This is a synthetic brush pen, so we can see that this one can be controlled and can make different texture of lines, thin and thick at the same with your press. So this one is very convenient when you're trying to ink something with different textures. So we can draw thick lines and thin lines with the same pen. So that is very quick if we are trying to make different textures on our drawing. This one is two, but this is a brush, so it's softer. So most of the time we will use it on more organic stuff. But as you can see, this one can make very, very stark textures when you press it hard enough. Okay. Of course, we have a normal ballpoint pen. This is quite normal ballpoint pen, but this one is waterproof. If you cannot get waterproof, you have to wait until the pen is dry. Okay, so this is waterproof. That's why I like to use it, because later we can paint the drawing with watercolor pencil. Right. So if we need the texture of the lines to be thicker with this ballpoint pen, we can't make it. So we need to use like multiple lines, right? Okay, we can still make it, but we need to go back and forth with the same line again. Okay, with the marker is the same thing, right? But this is a chisel headed marker, so we can do the lines thin and thick with the different angles of the chisel. So with the tip of the marker, with the side of the marker, we can go the thinnest and the thickest. So because we are using the watercolor pencil for this drawing today, so we are not going to use these two, because these two are, when you get water on the, it smudges. This one smudges too. This one doesn't smudge, and this one doesn't smudge. So we try to use these two that dries very quickly and doesn't smudge to our drawing, just to line it up, and then later we're going to color it. Okay. So as I said just now, we will line it with the marker and ballpoint pen very quickly, and then we do a very simple, a little bit cartoonish style of lining. Basically, we will line the details with the small lines and the outlines with stronger lines, so that it looks a little bit cartoonish, but the subject matter will be more pop. Okay, we get the horizontal line with the 4 point first, because we don't really need to have a very thick and very obvious horizontal line. It's not the subject matter. Okay, this one too, it's not really the main subject, so we just go with it. And now we use the marker to get the outlines of the whole building, but not the inside lines of it, so that the whole drawing will, the whole subject will be out in our drawing later. This drawing style would not be very recommended in schools or very more formal art schools, because it's not really a very viable and traditional way of painting. But we're doing this because it's a easier way to start and to know what is inking and what is painting. So we can learn through the process and divide out the process, so that you can know when you're inking. So when you want to learn how to ink, you do the inking by itself and not be too troubled by later you want to color or not color it. You can just leave it ink if it's done already, so you have the freedom of that. As I said just now, we're not doing that very fine art style of drawing. So if we have like lines going out, color outside the line or drawing outside the line, it's quite fine. We don't need to be limiting ourselves. So just if there's a mistake, we just try to cover it up later. If there's some details that we cannot capture, it's quite fine too. This is just a very beginner stage. So basically I just use the marker to draw out the outline of the fort. As you can see that there's the marker provides some texture to it, so that the outlines and the whole building is popped already. So now that we've got these very thick lines for the outside, we can use the smaller pen to capture the more detailed parts of the fort. here, windows here too. There's some black here, we just might as well color it. As I said, these lines do not need to be very perfect. We can just look at the photo reference that we have and get the shading of the shapes. Pressure ourselves to get the exact lines like maybe architects and or interior designers. We only like sketching, and we're trying to have fun too. So these lines, we don't need to. We know that they are going outward and inward, outward and inward. Then we try to capture these lines like that. That's fine enough. And the windows, some of them might be like weathered through time, so they're not that straight lines too. So don't be too bothered about that, as long as the form is there. There's a camera here, but we're not going to draw that. This is like a distraction, and this is, again, I said this is an old building, so try to capture the essence of the old building. thicker shadow here, so we'll try to make it thicker. But still, we have the basic forms using the pencils just now. Just follow the forms we did. All lines need to be covered again. Have fun. And the most important is still the overall shape of things. It's the old Sarawak crest, the badger, then zoom in and see what's written. 1880 here. Wooden door, very historical. I'll try to draw the wooden texture of it too. We'll go to this. Again, we try to use the lines to capture the shading of the building. It's not, you don't need to be too accurate. Get the forms of it out is more important. Get the feel of it out is more important. Not all the drawings need to be super accurate, but the forms need to be making it different forms from the actual thing. A little bit more, a little bit more texture, and highlight using the marker here, a little bit more too, a bit more form, and a bit more shadow, and these parts which are a little bit shaded. Alright, now that we have done the basic inking, so as we can see, what we said just now, this is actually like we can treat it as a done drawing. Okay, maybe we draw the trees out a little bit more. And once the tree is done, this is fair enough to say that this is a finished piece. So so actually, like our process is very simple, so you can treat every step of the way as a finished drawing if you like to treat it that way. But since we are doing the demo today, we'll let it dry for a little moment, and then we're going to try to paint it. I'm using watercolor pencils so that it's easier to control. So we're going to color it first with just normal color pencil style. So we'll start with the skies. It's just going through, like making the shape of the clouds with the color pencils. And it's the same thing with the pencil sketch that we did. We don't need to use a lot of force when we're using these pencil mediums, so that later we can add in some layers to make it more obvious, just like what I'm doing now. Like here, you can see that it's coming out the shapes. So it's slowly and lightly did, so that it makes a gradual colors. So don't need to be too strong when you're applying the color for the first time, especially. So just going softly, and then layer by layer we can do it with more layers. It will be more color. The color will be brighter, so we don't need to be rushing when coloring. Okay, so at the bottom parts we try to make the shape of the clouds, and then on the top part we try to make it the gradual, so that it looks more natural. Okay, just some simple colors to make the sky. Okay, now we can get the greens to make the floor for the grass. It's the same thing. You don't need to apply too much strength onto it. Just gradual colors. The greens of the backgrounds are a little bit darker, so we get the darker green. As for the building itself, it's actually like grayish or brownish actually, so we can just use like black or brown color to very lightly make the shades out. So now I'm using black, but later maybe we'll change it to brown. But these parts that are like the doors and the windows, of course we will color it more stronger color, so still using most likely black. windows and doors, we can color it stronger. But at the shades of the building, we don't need to, so just color it softly. Those two, so color is stronger. Rooftop, color is stronger because the existing color is stronger. Shading is softer color. Alright, actually now we can see that after coloring very softly, it makes somewhat a finished artwork as well. So we can treat it as a finished artwork. Of course, we need to add a little bit of accents of yellow here because of the flags of Sarawak, of course. Other than that, we can treat it as done. But of course, this is not really actually like finished. We can add some accents of, like as I said just now, browns for the shading of the brown to make it look like a little bit older building. To give it like ancient look, since this is a building from the Brook eras. So give it a little bit of brown accents. Doors and browns too. This makes it like more wood colored. Accents of the window pane. Very softly some of the shading again to make it okay, as the trees as well. So when the darker trees, we can use some blues to make the shade stronger. You don't need to use the black because the black would be too strong. Make the shadow of the trees here as well. Some darker greens on the grass too, so that we have more colors and more interesting colors. Colors will have the reaction with each other, so that it's more fun with the colors. This part seems a little bit empty, so maybe we can add one more cloud here too. Alright, so again, this is almost done. But since we are using watercolor pencil, so it's a fun way to use water to play around with the watercolor pencil to make it look like watercolor. So now we just add water to some of the parts that we painted so that the water color pencil will become like watercolor texture. So what you're gonna do is just apply water on top of it, but at the edges you can still maintain it dry. So as you can see, now I'm painting the shape of the cloud with my water brush. See that? Shape of the clouds. So here it's the same. And we don't want to have the lines here, so we just use more water to brush it off. Once it dries, later these will be gradual colors. Over here, but be mindful not to touch the colors that we previously did, the wet areas. So very soft colors for the sky. Same thing with the bushes, trees. As you can see, with the blue, it makes it quite a bit darker. Don't mind that you color out of the lines, because the lines is only like a guideline. It's not, you don't need to be too mindful of the lines actually. Just apply the colors unevenly so that it makes the more textures. See the difference between only applying green and applying a little bit of blue? So the colors come out different. Again, don't need to color inside the line all the time. Not trying to do something very perfect, trying to have fun. I forgot the cloud here, but it's okay, we'll come back to it later. Because now we're coloring the bushes, the trees, and then we don't want the green to be in the sky. Yeah. While we're at it, color the shades of the grass around the building so that we can highlight the building. Focus is on the building. So slowly we can take the colors into. Okay, now we can go ahead with the building. The most important thing with watercolor is we don't want to mix the waters right here. It's very close to the drawing that we're doing, so we don't want the water to be touching into these parts. So just be mindful when we're coloring, so the water don't touch each other. That's the most important. Else we just let it dry before we color the other parts. Okay, so but now it's we have a very strong line here, so we don't need to be too bothered about this. But if we have a thin line, we'll be careful not to spill the water over to here. So be mindful not to touch each other. See, the green is coming out, so we can use some. Don't worry with the mistakes. We can use the water towel to just dry it off. Okay. See this one again, but it's okay. Still dry it off a little bit. If we don't want this type of situation to come out, you can wait until the background is dry before you color you apply water to the color of the building. But it's fine. Sometimes the colors bleed too, because sometimes the reflection of the green can appear onto the building. So actually it's not a very big problem in terms of the total sketch if it's not everything coming over. As I said, we don't need to always be thinking about coloring inside the line. That's not how sketching words are made. So have fun and be relaxed. Try out everything that you can think of. So just applying the colors will make it like more watercolor style and have a bit like softer texture. So you can play around, like maybe brushing the colors a little bit so that it will make like the building is washed by some time. So like an ancient building, so you can make it the lines like that. This point, we're almost done. Okay, there's some mistake in smudging here, but it's okay. We can still enjoy ourselves while we are painting, and maybe we'll come back with some additional color once we're done, or maybe this is it. We can still apply some the colors into it. It will make it very dark, but it's also one of the watercolor techniques that you can use, coloring it before the water is dry. to give it a little bit more texture and more color, more vivid colors. Of course, as I said, this is just backgrounds, so maybe we won't do it, but it's okay since we already started with it. Just continue. So that giving the background a little bit more colors, hopefully we can bring up the foreground. Over so that it's not very color pencil like, somewhere in between color pencil and watercolor. Once we're here, we'll just wait for the water to dry up and maybe we'll be done. If you want it to be quicker, you can use a hairdryer actually. So try with the hairdryer. So now that we're done with the drawing and it seems dry, so we're going to apply a little bit of finishing touch. The drawing is, we can consider it done, but we can see that here is a little bit empty. So later I'm going to do some writings here, like Port Margarita here, and there's also a little bit of smudging here. So we also do, at the same time, we're going to cover this like sort of like mistake out. Okay, so here goes. everybody says everything gotta be perfect the first time, so any mistakes we're gonna just cover it up. Imperfections, just go over it again and that. Don't forget, of course, to sign your name. That's all. Thank you. Pustaka Negeri Sarawak will be hosting a sketching competition themed Sarawak CEMERLANG. It's open at 26th of July 2020 and will be closing at 23rd of August 2020, and the winners will be announced at 7th September 2020. The size of your sketches will only be needed at A4 size, and we can do it in any medium you like, including digital. So go download the entry forms for this competition at the Pustaka Negeri Sarawak website, and good luck. Thank you.